Kagurabachi's third arc wasted no time bringing us fans another potentially epic showdown, as we saw Hiyuki Kagari, an elite Kamunabi sorcerer, and Chihiro Rokuhira face off against each other. When we last saw the mystic katana-wielding swordsman, Hakuri Sasanami, a disgraced member of the Yakuza clan who hosts the infamous underground Rakuza Ichi auction, had just protected Chihiro from a direct hit from Hiyuki's notoriously deadly Flame Bone technique. So, is this the end for Chihiro's newfound ally? Will the lethal Kamunabi sorcerer and Rokuhira swordsman up the ante of their duel? Stick around to the end of this video as we tell you all about what you can expect from Kagurabachi Chapter 21. As always, full spoilers ahead for the aforementioned installment of Hokazono Sensei's fledgling shonen manga classic. You've been warned, so let's slice our way through it. What to expect in Kagurabachi Chapter 21. Picking up exactly right where Chapter 20 left off, we see a bloodied Hakuri laying on the floor, his jaws probably broken in numerous places after catching Hiyuki's flame bone with his face. Yet, the former Sazanami clan member musters up all his remaining strength to tell Chihiro why he saved him. Hakuri reveals to the Rokuhira swordsman that his attack against the Yakuza members earlier, on the upper floors of the hotel, wasn't the first time Chihiro rescued him. Hakuri was present when the Enten Wielder absorbed Sojo's devastating Mei technique during their first encounter on the streets of Tokyo. Not only did Chihiro save Hakuri then, but all the regular citizens around the area. Hearing this, the man sporting a chonmagi, the same Kamunabi agent who turned the hotel lobby into a dojo to trap Chihiro, tells Hiyuki that maybe Chihiro isn't what they painted them to be, a threat to the people of Japan. On the verge of passing out, Hakuri yells that Chihiro is a worthy mystic katana wielder, the exact opposite of what the Kamunabi thinks of him. Hakuri cheers on Chihiro, adding that he should hurry up and defeat the Kamunabi assassins, so they can proceed with their plan to retrieve Shinuchi. Hiyuki and his companion are surprised to find out that Kunishige's son is looking for the Shinuchi. After all, their original mission is to simply retrieve Enten and Kugurumo from Chihiro. Hiyuki thinks that this justifies the fact that they should kill Chihiro right then and there. Spent and broken, Hakuri basically loses all his motor functions after his short speech. Hiyuki turns to Chihiro and reiterates his position. The mystic katanas rightfully belong to the Japanese government, to the Kamunabi. Otherwise, these weapons of mass murder will only bring instability to the nation. For the last time, Hiyuki tries to convince Chihiro, telling him that he should cooperate with the Kamunabi and hand over Enten and Kugurumo if he's such a good guy. And we finally get the chonmagi-clad man's name in this chapter, Taifuku. Hiyuki adds that his partner's technique is inviolable. The only way to get out of Taifuku's sorceress dojo is for their duel to end. At that point, the Flame Bone sorcerer gives Chihiro an ultimatum: hand Enten over to them and terminate his eternal contract with the mystic katana, or die. Chihiro just coldly stares at the Kamunabi assassin in front of him, and Hiyuki takes this as an invitation to war. The Flame Bone sorcerer slowly approaches the Rokuhira swordsman, telling him that he doesn't enjoy killing weaklings. He taunts Chihiro to show him the same kind of skill and ruthlessness he showed when the swordsman fought Sojo and Kugurumo. Hiyuki prepares to clash with Enten's wielder, telling him that if they're going to fight, Chihiro had better take it seriously. Hiyuki's ultimatum reminds the Rokuhira swordsman of his fateful duel with Sojo and his late father's words of how extremely dangerous the mystic katanas are. Ultimately, Chihiro comes to the conclusion that he can put Enten, or even the other remaining swords, to good use when he recalls Hakuri telling him that he saved the boy's life. So he must remain resolute. Chihiro will not hand Enten and the other blades to anyone. Taifuku notices that the Rokuhira swordsman is bracing for an attack and tells Hiyuki to prepare himself. Smoke-like plumes of black-tinted Genryoku start to appear around Enten and Chihiro's hand as he activates Nishiki, one of the mystic katana's techniques. The swordsman raises his blade as memories of his father's lessons cascade over him. In order to defeat evil and protect the weak, Chihiro must learn to master Enten. With Nishiki fully activated, Chihiro disappears in a stream of Genryoku. Hiyuki's taken by surprise and immediately uses Rikuo, ribs to appear around him and form a protective shell. Bone-like protrusions burst from the floor and twirl around the Flame Bone sorcerer as he spots the Genryoku left in Chihiro's wake. Meanwhile, the Rokuhira swordsman zooms around his target in mid-air. Hiyuki keeps his eyes peeled, realizing that Chihiro's speed right now far surpasses the Kugurumo-based lightning technique that Sojo used to kill Kazune's squad a month ago. The Kamunabi assassin increases his technique's output and surrounds himself in flames. Chihiro notices Hiyuki's keeping him at a distance, but the Enten wielder circles around and finds an opening behind the flame-bone sorcerer. He lunges in, ready to strike. On the sidelines, Taifuku realizes that Hiyuki has set up a trap for Chihiro as he intently watches the battle. Enten's blade is about to connect when Hiyuki quickly turns around and gives Chihiro the classic butterfly wings technique, catching his katana with his palms. Even Taifuku is impressed that his partner can pull off such an impressive feat. But only a split second passes when Hiyuki realizes that he didn't catch Enten. It's Chihiro's wakizashi, his short sword. The Rokuhira swordsman switched his blades mid-swing, and Hiyuki's too late to notice that Chihiro's already right behind him, about to swing his mystic katana. Taifuku can only yell out for Hiyuki to watch out, but it's too late. Chihiro's attack connects, hitting the flame-bone sorcerer right on the skullcap. Hiyuki's still alive though, and he's pretty much insulted that Chihiro pulled a classic post-Botusai Kenshin Himura move on him. The swordsman reversed his blade so that its flat edge will strike its target, resulting in a non-lethal blow. Taifuku, ever the focused spectator, notes how Hiyuki could have evaded Chihiro's attack. In the middle of the magic doyo, the Rokuhira swordsman realizes that the Kamunabi sorcerer purposefully let himself get hit. This leaves an opening for Hiyuki to remotely use his flame-bone sorcery, as a fiery bone-covered fist appears right beside Chihiro with a flick of his fingers. Hiyuki screams for Chihiro to die just as his flame-bone fist lunges toward the swordsman. The impact from the flaming fist causes a huge explosion, but Hiyuki's counterattack fails to connect as Chihiro zips away with the help of Enten's Nishiki. Hiyuki has a crazed look on his face, blood dripping down from his forehead as he takes umbrage from the fact that Chihiro's holding back. He tells the swordsman that he's fully prepared to end Chihiro, so he had better make sure to be just as prepared as the Kamunabi assassin to kill or be killed. Even Taifuku and Hakuri can't help but feel uncomfortable with how bloodthirsty Hiyuki is. All the while, Taifuku thinks that his partner has lost it. If Chihiro truly were a ruthless killer, he would have gone after Taifuku first to deactivate his doyo-themed barrier. Taifuku speculates that maybe the reason Chihiro hasn't done that is because he can't, but the Chonmagi sporting Kamunabi agent brushes off the thought, noting that Chihiro isn't an idiot like Hakuri who, despite knowing he might die, caught Hiyuki's flame-bone fist at point blank with his face earlier. This makes Taifuku realize that Chihiro is actually honoring Hiyuki's wishes to face him head-on. The Rokuhira swordsman isn't holding back, and Taifuku ultimately concludes that Chihiro's one cool dude. Meanwhile, looking at his partner, Taifuku notices that Hiyuki has become blinded by his pride and principles as a Kamunabi agent. In the middle of the battlefield, Hiyuki continues berating Chihiro for not wholeheartedly trying to kill him. Completely absorbed in the heat of battle, the flame-bone sorcerer calls on another one of his techniques, Rikuo, spinal column. The ground beneath them starts to rumble, and Taifuku realizes that Hiyuki's actually sure that he plans on killing Chihiro now that he's called upon his deadliest ability. Taifuku then turns his attention to Hakuri and notices the kid's about to lose consciousness. The barrier-using Kamunabi agent panics when he sees this and tells his partner that the force field's about to break. Hearing this, Hiyuki comes to his senses and immediately cancels Rikuo spinal column. Chihiro takes this moment to take Hakuri and escape, and the moment Taifuku's force field disappears and they get transported to the hotel lobby, all Hiyuki can see is the faint trail of Enten and Chihiro's Genryoku. The flame-bone sorcerer takes a second to recompose himself, and he starts to feel the strain from using his abilities right after. Hiyuki's legs turn to spaghetti as Taifuku catches him by the collar before he collapses on the floor of the busy hotel lobby. The flame-bone sorcerer asks his partner where Chihiro has gone, to which Taifuku answers that he's escaped with the moron, Hakuri. In spite of his exhaustion, Hiyuki can't help but rant about his and Chihiro's truncated duel. Taifuku tells him that his technique got dispelled because Hakuri passed out, fulfilling the doyo's condition that it will disappear when the contest ends. Hiyuki says that he didn't even hit the Sazanami boy that hard, and Taifuku agrees. It's just that Hakuri was an absolute weakling. Taifuku asks Hiyuki what they should do now, to which Hiyuki replies by saying they now know what Chihiro and Hakuri are after, the Shinuchi, so the flame-bone sorcerer and his partner are going to go after it too. Somewhere else, Kiora Sazanami, the head of the Yakuza sorcerer family and lead auctioneer of the Rakuza Ichi, admires a wooden box coiled by a Shiminawa. The mustachioed proprietor of the notorious auction speaks alone, telling himself that this year's Rakuza Ichi might be the biggest one they've had to date. And that's all because the headlining item for the event would be something never seen before in Japan's underworld, the Shinuchi. Kiora comments that this particular blade is considered Kunishigi's masterpiece, the sword that stands atop the other 6 mystic katanas. However, the auctioneer does feel a bit disappointed that Shinuchi's true value can't be experienced because of the active eternal contract it has with its original wielder. Somewhere else, a malnourished person sits in the middle of a room. Large stone pillars with numerous afuda attached to them, encircled by Shimenawa, form a cage around its captive. It's then revealed that Kiora is standing alone in the middle of his auction house as he declares that the Sazanami family are fully prepared to make sure that the Rakuza Ichi goes exactly according to their plans. Kagurabachi Chapter 21 Analysis and Theories. Takeru Hokazono successfully pulled the rug on us with Kagurabachi's 21st installment, as we saw an abrupt end to Chihiro's duel with Hiyuki and, like the Flamebone Sorcerer himself, were just as frustrated that these two powerhouses didn't get to fully show their martial prowess. Thanks a lot, Hiyuki. Seriously though, it's easy to tell that this chapter of Hokazono-sensei's sensational shonen manga series serves as a setup for everything that we can expect in the Rakuza Ichi arc. As such, we can call everything that's happened until now as a delicious appetizer that will prepare us for eye-popping, mind-blowing storyline. So, all is forgiven. Right now we have the stage and its players clearly set, with the main antagonist coming in the form of Kiora Sazanami, and the arc will most likely reach its climax during the Rakuza Ichi event. An interesting point to take note of here is Hiyuki. As of Chapter 21, Hokazono-sensei has portrayed the Flameborn Sorcerer as a secondary antagonist in the arc, but there are indications that this might not completely be the case. As it stands, we can say that Kagurabachi is at a crossroads as far as Hiyuki is concerned. On one hand, the lethal Flamebone Sorcerer could remain as an entertaining foil to Chihiro. On the flip side, however, Hokazono-sensei might take his cues from classic shonen tropes and turn Hiyuki into Chihiro's rival as the story moves forward. Personally, we think it would be a bit disappointing if the Kamunabi assassin went that route and became just another typical shonen supporting character who competes with the protagonist to be the very best. Honestly, it would be a much more interesting choice, at least to us, if Hokazono-sensei kills off Hiyuki the way he did with Kazane and his anti-Kugarumo squad instead of turning him into Chihiro's very own Uchiha Sasuke or Vegeta. Sure, this is a shonen manga and that sort of plot element is par for the course, but it would be a shame if Hokazono-sensei didn't put a twist on that tired old trope at the very least. After all, one of the reasons Kagurabachi is a good read is because it manages to create something fresh based on other shonen manga series that came before it. Now, one of the biggest developments we've seen on Kagurabachi Chapter 21 concerns the Mystic Katana's Eternal Contract, the rule that locks in a single wielder for any one of these powerful blades. We've previously heard the Kamunabi talk about it in previous chapters, where we learned that the Eternal Contract ends with the death of a Mystic Katana's wielder. However, maybe that's not exactly the case. Hiyuki might be implying that the wielders of these super weapons can actively terminate their eternal contract with the sword when he mentioned it to Chihiro during his last-ditch attempt to convince the Rokuhira swordsman to surrender Enten to the Kamunabi. If that's the case, then a Mystic Katana user doesn't necessarily have to die for another wielder to use their blade. All this leads us to is the mystery surrounding the prisoner shown by the end of the chapter. For all intents and purposes, this person is implied to be Shinuchi's wielder. Kiora mentions that the Shinuchi's true value can't be experienced because of the sword's current, active, eternal contract. So, what's stopping them from killing this prisoner? It can't be because the Sazanami, hardcore sorcerer gangster, suddenly grew a conscience, right? Maybe it's possible that Shinuchi's original wielder also happens to be a powerful sorcerer, which explains why they're kept inside a talisman-covered prison. Or maybe they're somewhat related to the Sazanami family, which is why the clan wouldn't terminate them. In any case, all we can do right now is wait for the next chapter of Kagurabachi. What are your thoughts about Kagurabachi's 21st chapter? Got another manga and anime series you want to see us cover? Sound off in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to be the first to see the videos we have in store for you. See you next time, guys!